This story is called Coyote Ltd.
January the 15th. Coyote Ltd have included this device in their lavish information pack. They advised me to make recordings here as a sort of journal for the entire period in which I have engaged their services. A playback at a later date, they say, will enable me to appreciate and reflect upon the work they are undertaking on my behalf. Since I have paid them a considerable sum of money, I suppose I'd better make the effort, though frankly, I am of the opinion that keeping of journals, diaries and the like is for introspective navel-gazers. Let others make a record of my achievements, and they have. There are books about how I made my way up from the gutter and revolutionised the world of sanitary disposal. Books. I'm supposed to make a start with how I heard about Coyote. Dinner party I attended late last year. Dickie Bronson, the airline fellow, damn good do as I recall. Anyway, he told a story over the brandy. Keeps his image quite hip, does Dickie. So he gave it all a bit of the new age gloss and everyone lapped it up. He'd signed up with Coyote, he told us, to have an intricacy. The idea was for an elaborate hoax to be played upon oneself, and quite literally at one's own expense. Bonkers, I thought. But the idea, Bronson explained, was that one gained valuable insights through the very experience of being tricked. In his own case, he'd been in a lift in one of his office blocks when there was apparently a power failure. Alone in the lift, he'd called for assistance, but had been overcome by an overwhelming drowsiness. When he came to, he was still in the lift, but the lights were on and it was moving again. When it stopped, he got out. Bit of a shock. He wasn't in his block anymore, but somewhere looking more like a luxury hotel in Dubai. And sincerely perturbed receptionist was approaching him with a briefcase, which she said he'd inadvertently left in the foyer. It contained a stack of paper currency and his room keys. Well, obviously he twigged that this was the hoax that he'd paid for. But then came the twist. 15 minutes later, he was surrounded by armed policemen and arrested. He had no passport, no papers, and they told him no legitimate reason for being in their country. It was no use telling them who he was. What proof did he have? Or when the cuffs over his head, the hood, and when that came off, he was strapped to a chair in a windowless basement. What was his real business there? He knew he couldn't answer to their satisfaction. The hoax appeared to have gone badly wrong, and Dickie Bronson was shitting himself. They were just setting him up for a spot of waterboarding when a man from Coyote Ltd stepped out of the shadows. Gotcha. Bronson made out this had been a profound experience, motivating large donations to Amnesty International and the like on behalf of those unfortunate folk for whom what he'd just tasted was no hoax. Of course, I thought the story did his public profile no harm at all. A bit of openness, vulnerability, compassion. People like to see those things in their millionaires. Not that my rep is founded on having a caring side, but it wouldn't do any harm if I could get people thinking that beneath that tough exterior there was a heart of gold, or at least a bit of mush, whatever. Assuming, of course, Coyote Ltd were up to pulling the wool over my eyes. February the 8th. More than 3 weeks later and I'm still waiting. All right, I've been over in Taiwan pulling a lame duck subsidiary up to scratch, and they're not going to find me around the world. But I've paid good money for this bloody hoax, this oh so humbling experience that I will then make as much PR capital out of as I can. Not that, as I've said, they can have an easy time making a fool out of me. I've been looking at their brochure testimonials again. I mean, just how easy is it to convince some people that black is white and vice versa. Take this gent, they got this tight-fitting rubber insect costume onto while he was asleep. He wakes up and he's on his back and it's very difficult to move, and there's all these little legs in front of him, waving up and down. Well, it's a clever outfit, and they've got his family in on the act, all treating him like there's been some sort of horrible transformation. But did he really, at any point, believe that he had genuinely metamorphosed? I don't think so, unless they drugged him or something. Whatever. Thing is, he gets himself a load of interviews after the event, talks up the insight it's given him into what it feels like to be viewed with disgust and loathing, and how he's planning to divert some of his wealth into providing employment for people who suffer with disfigurements and what have you. Nice story. Come on, Coyote, get this bloody hoax on me, will you? I need some material to work with. March 15th. I've had some hard words with Joel Piltner, my AD, today. When I first considered contracting Coyote to hoax me, I still had a lot of doubts, and it was after discussing it with Joel that I made my decision. He assured me he'd investigated them thoroughly. Their operation was absolutely legit and above board. Safe bet, he said. Well, I'm beginning to have my doubts again. I've told Joel I want to know exactly what Coyote Ltd are up to, what they have planned for me, and when they intend to carry it out. They're dragging this thing out, and it's turning into a bit of a farrago, frankly. I've had my legal team look over the contract again, and there's a withdrawal clause. If I don't get satisfaction out of them soon, I'm using it. April 1st. It's nearly midnight. You'd think if Coyote had something planned, they might have pulled it off today. Mind you, when they profiled me, I told them I'd never had much time for fooling around. April 1st or any day of the year for that matter. I told them straight. I was only going into this because of what they did for Dickie Bronson. Him and another one I heard about, old Leon Katz. Now, I've done some deals with Leon in my time, and I know he prides himself on being astute. So how they managed to convince him to invest capital into a company marketing squirrel meat burgers, I don't know, but it did make me smile. They'd done it full on, with the packaging, the design, themes, logistics, the lot. Or maybe that was another one where he saw it coming. At any rate, he turned it round. He had received, he said, a lesson in humility, which would inform his future business practice. Then he had the whole of his marketing team make a study of the Coyote package to see what they could learn. Lesson in humility, my arse. PR, that's the real name of the game. Piltner contacted Coyote as per my request and came back to me with some airy-fairy story about how they had something underway. I told him, I said, that's not what I asked you to find out. He said they were not prepared under any circumstances to reveal their plans prior to the event, and that, just as everyone else had, I would find out in due course what they had in mind for me. That wasn't good enough. I told Piltner, gave him his marching orders there and then. No monkeying. April 20th. They've had the bloody cheek to ask me for more money. They sent this glamorous bit of totty, heel, short skirt and legs right up to her arse. I wouldn't have given her the time of day, but being as she was from Coyote, I thought I'd have a few words. I told her straight, if your lot can't get on with it, I said, well, they can't put me in the picture, then I shall be withdrawing from the contract. It doesn't matter whether it's a publicity-generating hoax or a consignment of widgets from Shanghai. If you can't deliver the goods, you don't get the business. She started to give me some flannel about how I was a special case and that what they had in mind for me was probably going to be one of the most spectacular pieces of work in their entire portfolio. I wasn't having any of it. I sent her out with a flea in her ear. She could tell her bosses that if they couldn't deliver in the next 2 weeks, I would be requiring a full refund. May 6th. Nothing. And they're not answering my calls. May 10th. The bloody number's unobtainable now. I got the legal boys onto it pronto when the deadline was up, but it turns out the address that Coyote Ltd were apparently working from is on the 13th floor of a 12-storey building. The mail was being diverted, but where it went, no one can tell. I got onto Dickie Bronson to see if he still had any kind of a fix on them. He was a bit distracted getting himself kitted up for one of those bungee jumps he does. Couldn't remember who they were, and when I reminded him, he dismissed them. Very much a last year's thing. Does a lot of that, does Dickie. As for Leon, he's not spoken to me since I undercut him on the number 2 contract for Indonesia, so it's no use trying him. I've been on with the police, of course, but they don't call them plods for nothing. They wanted to speak to Joe Piltner, since he was the last to have visited Coyote in their 13th floor office. Turns out he's another one that can't be traced. Coyote Ltd have vanished into thin air with my money. And that's untraceable too, just got channeled through a series of holding accounts into some sort of financial void. So there's not much point in recording any more of these. I shall not be doing any appreciating and reflecting, because the work they've done on my behalf amounts to nothing more than elaborately defrauding me. Is this their idea of a hoax? Frankly speaking, I fail to see the joke.